The laughter began before the vote was even finished. It rolled through the grand chamber of the Galactic Council like thunder, echoing off walls grown from crystallized neutron stone and polished by 10,000 years of conquest. Delegates lounged in biomechanical thrones, tails flicking, frills flaring, mandibles clacking in open amusement. Earth? Scoffed High Strategist Vrail of the Korth Dominion, his 4 eyes narrowing in delight. You convened us for that? A hologram blossomed above the council pit, an unremarkable blue planet circling an average yellow star. No Dyson shell. No stellar engines. No ringworlds or system-spanning megastructures. Just cluttered orbits and noisy electromagnetic chatter. Primitive, purred Ambassador Zeleth, her voice oiled with contempt. They still fracture themselves into nation-states. They still fight internal wars. Half their population denies basic scientific consensus. Several delegates hissed approval. They broadcast their arguments, another counselor added. Political infighting. Cultural decay. Endless media noise. A species incapable of silence. The hologram zoomed closer, cities glowing like infections across continents, oceans striped with shipping lanes. No unified planetary fleet, Vrail continued. No psionic shield grid. Their strongest weapons barely qualify as system denial ordnance. A junior analyst hesitated, claws tapping nervously. They are resilient. Their species profile notes. Vrail waved him off. Every prey species is resilient right up until it isn't. Laughter again. Older this time. Tired. The sound of predators bored with the hunt. The vote passed without dissent. Earth would not be conquered. Conquest implied effort, administration, integration. Earth would be harvested. The decision was transmitted instantly across council space. Shipyards activated ancient protocols. Fleets that had ended civilizations older than human history altered course with mechanical precision. No speeches were made for Earth. No warning was deemed necessary. After all, who warns livestock? And yet, something strange happened. The moment the Council fleet altered trajectory towards Sol, human transmissions changed. Not in volume. In absence. The galaxy was accustomed to humanity's noise. Endless signals bleeding into space, entertainment, arguments, advertisements, emergency broadcasts layered atop one another like a civilization incapable of shutting up. That noise vanished. Long-range listening arrays registered sudden quiet across Earth's spectrum. No panic spikes. No frantic diplomatic calls. No desperate pleas to the Council. Just silence. An anomaly report was filed. It was ignored. The first Council vanguard emerged beyond Pluto's orbit in a flawless hyperspace bloom, hundreds of warships arranged in ceremonial formation. Hulls gleamed with ancestral markings. Weapons charged openly, ostentatiously. This was how the Council liked its wars. Visible. Inevitable. Terrifying. A system-wide broadcast followed, translated automatically into every known human language and several they hadn't yet discovered. By decree of the Galactic Council. The voice intoned, ancient and absolute. This system is forfeit. Earth is hereby designated for resource reclamation. Resistance is futile. Compliance will minimize suffering. The commanders waited for the usual responses. Defiance. Panic. Negotiation. Begging. Nothing came. The silence stretched long enough to make junior officers uneasy. Are their receivers functioning? One asked. Confirmed, replied another. They heard us. Minutes passed. Then, finally, a signal. Not laser tight. Not quantum encrypted. Old. Narrowband. Radio. The kind of transmission the Council associated with museum exhibits and extinct species. A single human voice crackled through the flagship's command deck. Male. Calm. Unhurried. Galactic Council fleet, the man said. This is Earth. Several officers relaxed. Of course. There it was. Fear. Delay tactics. You have been notified. The alien commander replied coldly. Your response window has expired. A pause. Then the human spoke again, faint amusement edging his words. Just wanted to make sure you knew, you're early. The commander's frills twitched. Early for what? Another pause. Longer this time. For the part where you regret this. The signal cut. Somewhere deep inside Sol, far beneath the surface of the star humans called home, something moved. The Council fleet advanced. They passed the orbit of Neptune unchallenged. Uranus. Saturn. Jupiter. No defensive lines. No minefields. No interceptor swarms. Typical, Vrail said from the Council command relay. They've chosen paralysis. But the closer the fleet drew to the inner system, the more the silence began to feel intentional. Earth hung ahead of them now, serene and blue. Then the sun flickered. Not a flare. Not a coronal mass ejection. A hiccup. Sensors blared in confusion. Stellar readings spiked, dipped, then normalized. Report, the commander snapped. Unknown energy fluctuation, an officer replied. Localized. Artificial origin suspected. Before orders could be given, space folded. Not collapsed. Not tore. Folded, like a blade slipping between ribs. Half the vanguard ceased to exist. No explosion. No debris. One moment they were there. The next, empty space. Shock rippled through the fleet. What weapon was that? Someone shouted. No one answered. Human ships began to appear. Not from hyperspace. From nowhere. They emerged from gravitational blind spots the Council had never bothered to monitor. Lagrange shadows, engineered voids, regions of warped physics humans had quietly turned into hiding places. The ships were not beautiful. They were ugly, scarred, asymmetrical. Armor plates mismatched. Hulls pitted with old damage never repaired because it didn't affect function. Names were painted across their sides in crude human lettering. Last argument. Debt collector. We tried peace. A human fleet transmission cut through every channel at once, overriding Council priority codes with brute force signal flooding. A different voice now. Female. Steady. Hard. Galactic Council, she said. You should have read our history instead of our tech specs. Weapons fire erupted across the void. Plasma lanced outward. Human ships died, some instantly, torn apart in brilliant silence. And Earth watched. In bunkers carved beneath mountains, politicians who had spent careers sabotaging one another stood shoulder to shoulder. Generals stopped asking for permission. Across the planet, arguments ended. Factories retooled in hours. Civilian freighters were stripped, armored, armed. Retired soldiers opened closets they'd sworn never to open again. Because humanity didn't unite out of idealism. It united out of memory. It remembered every time it had been underestimated. And the Council, laughing, ancient, confident, had just made the oldest mistake in the universe. They had assumed silence meant weakness. The war for Earth had begun. The Galactic Council had fought thousands of wars. This one did not behave correctly. Human ships did not form neat lines or ceremonial wedges. They scattered, vanished, reappeared from impossible vectors, striking like ambushed predators rather than an empire's navy. Their movements made no aesthetic sense. Their formations looked wrong. Alien targeting AIs struggled. Predictive models failed. Probability trees collapsed into static. Why aren't they holding position? A Council tactician hissed. Because they're not trying to win this battle. Another replied slowly. They're trying to survive it. The Council's return fire was overwhelming. Stellar-grade plasma batteries carved through space. Entire human vessels disappeared in white-hot flashes. Sensor logs filled with casualty reports. And yet, every human loss seemed to buy time rather than territory. Time for something else to move. A second wave of human ships emerged, smaller and faster, darting through debris fields and the wreckage of their own dead. They targeted logistics first, refuelers, command relays, sensor hubs. Protect the support craft! The alien commander roared. Too late. Explosions rippled through the Council's rear lines. Fuel stores ignited. Data nodes vanished. Communication lag increased by microseconds. Then milliseconds. Then seconds. For the first time in millennia, the Council fleet was fighting partially blind. A human transmission cut through the chaos, short, sharp, mocking. You ever fight a species that plans to lose? The voice asked. That's the mistake you made. We always assumed the worst. Boarding alarms screamed across multiple Council vessels. Human strike pods, crude metal cylinders with engines bolted on, slammed into alien hulls at suicidal velocities. Many missed. Some were vaporized. Enough got through. Inside the flagship Unbroken Authority, alien shock troops waited confidently in pristine corridors grown from living alloy. They were tall, armored, bred for combat over generations. The first hatch blew inward. Smoke poured in. Then humans. Not in perfect formation. Not shouting slogans. They moved fast, low, ugly. Shotguns thundered in vacuum-rated bursts. Slugs tore through alien armor at point-blank range, turning elegance into meat. The aliens charged, claws flashing. Humans met them with blades. Knives. Axes. Entrenching tools sharpened into brutality. A Korth officer impaled a human through the chest, lifting him off the deck. The human laughed, wet, broken, and pulled a grenade pin with his teeth. The corridor vanished. Elsewhere, Marines advanced through fire and decompression, stepping over their dead without slowing. You're animals! An alien commander shrieked through a failing translator. A Marine kicked his weapon away and slammed him into the wall. No, she growled, pressing a blade under his jaw. Animals run when they're hurt. We remember. She ended him and kept moving. Across the fleet, similar scenes unfolded. Council soldiers were trained for decisive engagements, clean victories. Humans fought like people who had buried friends before and expected to do it again. And while the battle raged, something quieter, and far more dangerous, was happening. Human diplomats had not fled. They had hijacked. Council communication channels, once thought inviolable, were suddenly flooded with human legal codes, economic data, and historical records. Not propaganda. Receipts. Centuries of Council-approved exterminations. Resource thefts disguised as stabilization. Client species erased after becoming inconvenient. The files were broadcast everywhere. To subject worlds. To mercantile leagues. To military governors who had sworn loyalty believing the Council benevolent. Rebellion sparked like dry grass catching flame. This is misinformation! A Council speaker screamed on an emergency broadcast. A human reply cut in instantly. No, the voice said calmly. This is what you buried. We just dug it up. Systems went dark across Council space as planetary governors declared neutrality, or outright revolt. Back in Sol, Earth's orbital defenses finally activated. Not shining arrays or planet-wide shields. Mines. Thousands of them. Cold. Dumb. Invisible. Council ships maneuvered, too late. Explosions bloomed everywhere as vessels tore themselves apart trying to evade threats they couldn't see or predict. Still, the Council fleet pressed inward. Focus fire on the planet, Vrail ordered from the command nexus. Break their morale. The weapons aligned. For the first time since the war began, Earth answered directly. A wideband transmission, unencrypted, broadcast from the surface. A man's voice. Older. Tired. Council fleet, he said. We've been watching you study us for decades. You got one thing right. The plasma batteries charged. We are divided. The weapons fired. Human countermeasures flared too late. Several alien strikes punched through the defense grid. Cities burned. Oceans boiled. Millions died in seconds. The galaxy went silent. Then the human voice returned, no longer tired. Cold. But there's one thing that's always brought us together. Deep beneath Earth's crust, doors that had never officially existed began to open. And you just gave us a reason. Somewhere far beyond the battlefield, in the hidden math of hyperspace itself, humanity reached out and broke something fundamental. The war was about to stop being local. The moment the first city died, the tone of the war changed. Before, humanity had fought like a cornered animal, calculating, improvising, sacrificing pieces to stay alive. After, it fought like a species that had accepted something irreversible. Across Earth, emergency sirens howled, then cut off as power grids rerouted. Smoke climbed into the sky where coastlines had been erased. Names were still being written onto casualty lists when the order went out. Not public. Not debated. Not unanimous. Final. Deep beneath mountains, oceans, and cities, humanity's oldest secrets unlocked. They were not superweapons in the way the Council imagined. No planet crackers. No galaxy-spanning beams. They were worse. They were ideas turned into machinery. Human scientists had never believed hyperspace was safe. Too clean. Too convenient. A cosmic shortcut that everyone used without asking why it worked. So humanity had studied it quietly. Illegally. Obsessively. They discovered the truth. Hyperspace wasn't empty. It was balanced. And balance could be broken. On Earth, a woman stood before a bank of switches that hadn't been touched since they were installed. Her hand shook, not from fear, but from memory. She pressed the first one. Nothing visible happened. Across the galaxy, everything began to go wrong. Council ships attempting emergency jumps vanished mid-transition. Some reappeared inside themselves, hulls folded like paper. Others emerged fused to asteroids, moons, or each other. Entire fleets arrived inside stars, their deaths lighting suns brighter for a heartbeat. Trade routes collapsed. Reinforcements never arrived. Messages sent through hyperspace returned as static, or screams. What did they do? A council engineer whispered, staring at incomprehensible sensor data. They poisoned it, another replied. They've made faster-than-light travel hostile. The council's greatest strength, mobility, was gone. In Seoul, human ships changed tactics immediately. No longer defensive. No longer delaying. They hunted. Small task forces slipped through crippled enemy formations, striking command ships, supply depots, and officers who had once believed themselves untouchable. They left messages behind. Not broadcasts. Carvings cut into wreckage. Symbols burned into hulls. You came to our home. The Council tried to escalate. Ancient contingency weapons were authorized, devices meant to sterilize entire biospheres as warnings. One such weapon was launched toward Earth, escorted by what remained of the elite guard. Human ships intercepted, but not all. The weapon entered Earth's atmosphere. There was no defense left to stop it. A continent screamed. The blast flattened cities, boiled seas, and turned millions of lives into shadows etched into stone. The planet shuddered. Even hardened veterans went quiet as casualty estimates climbed beyond comprehension. The galaxy watched, horrified. For a moment, even the Council felt something like doubt. Then Earth answered. The response did not come from a fleet or a general. It came from the ruins. A wideband transmission burst from emergency towers, relayed by surviving satellites and jury-rigged transmitters. A woman's voice, raw with grief and fury. You killed civilians, she said. You don't get to call this war anymore. Behind her, fires burned where cities had been. That was the line. With that declaration, humanity changed the rules. A second switch was thrown. Hyperspace didn't just become dangerous. It became closed. Selective gravitational locks snapped into place across key junctions in space-time, points only humans knew how to map. Council core worlds were suddenly isolated, cut off from one another like islands after the sea vanished. The Galactic Council chamber went dark as communication relays failed. Delegates shouted, panicked, clawing at consoles that no longer connected to anything beyond their own system. Human fleets did not rush in to finish them. They did something far crueler. They withdrew. Not from fear. From strategy. Human diplomats moved instead, arriving at border systems by sublight, carrying evidence, weapons, and offers. "We won't rule you," they told subject species. "We won't save you either. But we'll make sure the council can't come back." Rebellions became revolutions. Council governors were dragged from palaces. Statues fell. Old banners burned. And at the center of it all, the council's own world sat silent, alive, intact, and suddenly alone. A human admiral addressed the remaining council leadership via a fragile, one-way link. "You wanted Earth as a resource," he said. "So here's the cost." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You don't get to die. You get to live with this." The link cut. The war was over. The consequences were just beginning. Years passed, but no one in the galaxy ever forgot the lesson. First contact with humans was no longer taught as an introduction to diplomacy. It was a warning. A cautionary tale whispered in council chambers and rebel cells alike. You didn't fight humans. You didn't underestimate them. You didn't assume silence meant weakness. Earth itself rebuilt slowly, painfully, and without excuses. Cities rose from the ashes, scarred but defiant. Old soldiers returned to farms, businesses, and classrooms, teaching a new generation the art of survival, not glory. Civilians who had once been engineers or clerks became pilots, tacticians, and diplomats, hardened by necessity but tempered with a rare, cold humor. Humanity had not changed because it could, it had changed because it had been forced to remember itself. And yet, victory did not make humans gods. Some had lost everything, and some had lost the capacity to forgive. Even among allies, distrust lingered, old rivalries simmering beneath the surface. But in this fractured unity, there was strength. The galaxy had learned the hard way: underestimate humans, and you paid for it. Across the void, the remnants of the Galactic Council existed in silence. Entire systems they once controlled now looked upon them with contempt, rebellion, or outright hostility. Hyperspace corridors they had depended on were poisoned, patched, or blocked entirely. Messages sent into the void returned only static, or the quiet laughter of humans on the other side, watching, waiting. They were still alive, still dangerous, still human. When an alien envoy finally managed to reach Earth to negotiate, they were met with a paradox: open hospitality and quiet menace. Humans welcomed them with food, shelter, and conversation, but they made one thing perfectly clear. "You're alive," said an old Marine, now a civilian advisor. "That's your miracle. Don't waste it." The envoy asked why humanity hadn't finished them, hadn't destroyed the council outright. The Marine smiled, a slow, knowing curl of lips that revealed both amusement and warning. "Because we're not monsters," he said. "We just make them when we have to." Stories of those battles became legend, not for the explosions or the tactics, but for the audacity, the unpredictability, the terrifying genius of a species that could fight with courage, cruelty, and humor all at once. Humans were no longer the galaxy's underdogs. They were its equalizers, a force that could not be controlled, predicted, or ignored. And somewhere, in a galaxy cut off from its once mighty council, former delegates looked up at the night sky, alone, powerless, and finally understood the truth too late. Attacking Earth had not been insane. Surviving it, surviving humans, was. The galaxy whispered their new title in awe and fear. The terrifying, unpredictable, and always remembering humans. And Earth laughed.